It's match day here on Vimos, presented by Degree, and we're literally all over the map as we count down to kickoff between Canada and Venezuela in the quarterfinal tie at the Copa America. Gareth Wheeler in the place where traffic doesn't move, Toronto, Ontario. We have AGR in the beautiful, one of my favorite cities on the planet, in Vancouver, British Columbia. And Oliver Platt in one of my least favorite places, unless you like Bibles and barbecue, it's number one in Dallas, Texas. How are you, boys? Ollie, how are things on the ground in Dallas today?
Things are excruciatingly hot. It's been over 40 degrees in the actual feels like temperature. I think one thing I will say though, Wheels, to this place's credit, traffic is pretty good. You move around smoothly here, so that's an upgrade.
American dream right there.
You're trying to entice me to make the move. Well, tonight we're hoping that the Canadian team will be moving in the right direction at AT&T Stadium, the house that Jerry built. A big game for the program, a big game for this team. Much of the talk heading into this one has been whether Canada has enough in attack to kind of see this process through and come away with the result tonight. Jesse Marsh, addressing the media on match day -1, tackled that exact topic.
And like I've said many times, I know the goals will come, partly because of the quality that we have up the pitch and partly because we can be explosive enough and we're close to having really good moments and being very dangerous. So I expect this to be a tight game. Both teams I think, have really good defenses and have been very organized against the ball. But we're going to try to still find our ways in possession to be dangerous and find ways to command the game in possession. And then in the final third to be a little bit more lethal and ruthless and find ways to score goals. So we know that that'll be important.
AGR, you've broken down this team over the years and especially through this tournament and the way that Jesse Marsh has this group playing. Do you share his confidence that the goals will come? It's a matter of time. It's a matter of when rather than if.
Yeah, it definitely does feel like they're due a bit more than they've had so far. I mean, just to crunch the numbers, they've had 5 XG in Marsh's 5 games. They've had 3.46 XG this tournament. Those are both, low to mid. Like, it's not elite by any means. It's not like they're missing 3-4 goals a game, but they have been due a goal a game and they haven't been getting it. They've missed 8 out of 9 big chances this tournament. They've got too much finishing talent, I think, to be missing chances at that rate. So I definitely think goals should start falling. I guess the bigger question is just how often, like how much. The big worry I've had with this team right now is shot volume. They're just not generating enough shots. Actually, fun fact, going through all these numbers, Canada's third in the whole tournament in XG per shot. It means when they shoot, they're shooting good quality looks. They're getting close to goal. They're just not shooting enough. And when you're not testing goalkeepers, you're not putting that pressure on defenses. It makes their job a little easier. So heading into this Venezuela test where they're going up against a good defensive team, it's hard to see the offense swaying too much unless they get way more quality looks than they've had so far.
Yeah, Ollie, through the group stage, I believe Canada 8th in expected goals among all teams in this tournament. We know how Canada are effective in attack. It's through transition play. That's how they scored their goal in this tournament as well. Do you share the sentiment with AGR and Marsh on this one, that it's going to come together?
Somewhat. I think Jesse Marsh is right in that I do think, Alex gave the stats. They do indicate Canada could be scoring more goals than they have done. I think the eye test backs that up as well. And, on the transition opportunities, Wheels, I think the Chile game, they were better in that regard. They were a bit more direct, willing to play behind earlier. And you did see some high quality looks as a result of that type of play. And that's the type of qualities and characteristics I think Canada has that some of the teams they're coming up against really struggle to deal with. The problem is this is a very small sample size, right? This is one game. So if you were to ask me, are Canada going to score more goals than they have done over the next 10 games? I'd say, yeah, absolutely. Everything suggests that the goals are going to start to flow. This is one match. This is 90 minutes. It's going to come down to more so than, a return to kind of the average or what the numbers suggest. It's going to come down to do their big players, Kyle Lowry, Jonathan Davids, and even the midfield supporting them as well. Can they step up and produce big moments in this game? So someone's got to take responsibility. Hopefully multiple players will take responsibility in that regard. I don't think they're short on confidence. It's just when is it going to start to come good? Is it going to be soon enough that it allows them to continue at this tournament?
Okay, it also depends how the game will be played. Like oftentimes knockout round fixtures, They're very cagey. They're much slower. Chances are at a premium. Do you think there's a chance, though, that this game could be a little bit more wide open than that, seeing Venezuela through this tournament? Or are you expecting just a really tight and cagey match here, Ollie?
I think I would lean. To be honest with you, I don't know what to expect from this game. I think it's really evenly matched. The betting suggests that, right? Like you can find Canada as slight favorites, you can find them as slight underdogs. It's right down the middle. So it's a non-answer, but I really do think it could go either way in terms of what type of match we see. If I was to predict, I think it will be tight, like Marsh said, and more likely to be low scoring. But you just never quite know with this Canadian team because they do have so much explosiveness and dynamism, and then also can be prone to an error at the back, right? And so it's really difficult to tell. But I would think it will be one that's pretty close and tightly fought.
AGR, I mean, Venezuela perfect throughout the group stage. Yes, Ecuador had a man sent off, and they took full advantage, winning that game 2-1. But the match that stood out for me was a thrilling 1-0 victory over Mexico, where, in fairness, if Mexico could have finished their breakfast, then we might be having a completely different match altogether here today. But the game was quick. It was fast. There were plenty of chances in transition. I just don't know if that style of game is going to be able to be replicated or play out in a game where the stakes are so high here today.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine this game being super wide open because Venezuela, they're super cagey. Watching that Mexico game, something that stood out is you don't have to worry about their fullbacks getting altitude sickness. They hardly cross the half line most of the game. Like they're very defensive, very cautious. Venezuela's double pivot so defensively solid. Like it's hard to imagine them wanting to open the game up, and they'll see Canada. They know that Canada, one of their biggest weaknesses, you saw it against 10 men of Peru and 10 men of Chile. They can struggle when teams sit back, even if it's down a player or not, and they struggle to break down the low blocks. It's perhaps a lack of a creative midfielder that does them in that regard. So I think if Venezuela, who already is a bit of a cagier team, a bit more of a defense-minded team, that's kind of been the identity under Batista, their coach. Yeah, I expect this game. My official prediction's 0-0, and I would not be surprised to see that play.
Wow. I mean, my prediction, and it's more probably based upon hope than anything else, is that there might be an early goal and things open up, because I think it could be a really watchable game where there isn't that one pronounced favor parking the proverbial bus against the superior side, right? Like, I think this game could have the ingredients of fireworks, but I mean, to Ollie's point, I just don't know what to expect in this game whatsoever. I honestly have no clue. I gave my prediction at 2-2, but I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me any result just about if it played out here today. Okay, so what about the 11 today, Ollie? And what decisions does Marsh have to make? Obviously, with Tajon Buchanan out through a broken leg, that's taken obviously him out of the equation, but there seems to be 3 preferred wingers to play 2 positions. And it's also being suggested, probably more from the outside of the Canada camp than elsewhere, that maybe a formation change would have some merit. So what are you looking at in terms of a potential 11, Ollie?
I'd be surprised if he makes drastic changes or changes the system. The big one for me is central midfield. Does he stick with Jonathan Osorio, who I thought did very well in the last game against Chile? Or does he go back to Ishmael Kone, who maybe just has a bit more upsides? And, you know, when you get a good Kone day, you can look like one of as good a midfielder as you've seen in a Canada jersey. So that, I think, is the big gamble. I think there's also maybe a decision to be made on the wings. You kind of have with Buchanan out 3 options for 2 positions in Liam Miller, Jacob Schaffelberg, and Richie Larea. But I thought they were much better against Chile than they were against Peru, despite the results being the other way around. And if I had to predict, I think Jesse Marsh will run it back with the same 11. I could see no changes at all for this game.
What about you, AGR?
I'd echo what Ollie said in terms of where I'm looking in the roster or in the lineup. It's definitely down to wing and midfield, because that back 5, 4 plus Crepo, it's written in stone. I think you can expect that. In midfield, the Osorio versus Kone debate is good because Osorio's been good, but also you want to bet on Kone in a game like this. I feel like it would be harsh to bench him in a match like this where I feel like he could take over. And it's worth noting Venezuela, for me, the strength is in that midfield. Yangel Herrera had a phenomenal season for Girona, and Jose Martinez, for my money, is one of the best 6s in all of MLS. Like, it was so solid. This group stage is how defensively compact. Canada might be, might benefit from a Kone in there. But then is it fair to drop Osorio? Is there room for both? Does Osorio move up to his preferred 10? Jesse Marsch had played them there against France, so it's not like completely, unfamiliar to suggest Osorio could play in the front line. But of course, that involves dropping one of the strikers, which wouldn't be the easiest decision. And then out wide, as I mentioned, with the defensive fullbacks, they have to be defensive on Venezuela because their wingers aren't the most defensive. As TFC fans will know, Jefferson Soteldo, he can create some magic in the attack. He's not going to be tracking back and winning tackles for you. So Canada could benefit from having two inverted wingers. That could benefit Liam Miller and Jacob Schaffelberg, which would then allow the Canadian fullbacks to overlap. So that's something I'm watching for offense.
Yeah, for me, I don't take out Kyle Aaron. He started the last 9 games for this Canada side, and he's done a job. What they require is service. I think they'll get more service if Ismail Kone is back in the team. That is one change I absolutely make. Remember, when they were playing Chile, it was a game where he wasn't coming off his best. And obviously, he was affected by his transfer, which was just processed right at that exact same time to Marseille. So I thought it was smart to just give him a breather, give him some time to collect himself, and have him ready to go here. Also, I just go back to what's worked, and that's bringing Schaffelberg off the bench. I start Miller, I start Lorea down the flanks with Kone in the middle. And other than that, I keep everything the same. We'll see. I just don't think that the game calls for wholesale changes. I think that we know what Canada's strengths are. Their weakness is just creating chances, maybe not having that number 10, but I don't know if Osorio is that guy that will make that big of a difference if you take out one of the attackers. All right, so let's weigh in on both sides here. I want to know your reasons why Canada could win or lose this Copa America quarterfinal tie. AJ, I'll start with you. First, why Canada has a real chance of winning this, and what could maybe go wrong that would maybe set them back and put them on the losing side of the equation?
Yeah, I think Canada can win because when it comes down to it, they've got some difference makers that if the ball falls to a Jonathan David in the box, a Kyle Aaron, if Alphonso Davies can get up the pitch, those are the guys that can break open a game. And qualitatively, unless they're playing Argentina, Colombia, or Brazil, or Uruguay, Canada has two of the best players in the world on the pitch at any moment. So I think that's something that could really manifest itself. And the fact they've been so solid defensively always gives you a chance in tournament knockout games. But conversely, on the other side, this Venezuela team just seems to have a bit of magic in themselves right now. They've got so much confidence, which is dangerous. They're good defensively as well. And for Canada, it does feel like for as good as they've been defensively, feels like maybe they're one moment away from having sometimes that's the way it is with the high line and how aggressive they've been defending. And all it takes is one Rondon magic and they could easily lose 1-0. So that'd probably be what I see on the flip side.
Ollie, to you?
Yeah, why they can win, I think I'm similar with Alex. Like, they do have better players than Venezuela, and that's been the interesting thing I think about this tournament is that, I think Canada gets seen obviously as a big underdog and a team that no one really expected to do much at this tournament. But if you look at, I was looking at some of the coverage of in the local media before the Peru and Chile game, and then being on the ground here and speaking to some Venezuelan journalists, like they look at Alphonso Davies and Jonathan David and they say, we don't have players like that. Right. And that is, I think, this change of perception that's happened with this Canadian team that's put us in a position, that we're probably not used to as a country, going up against countries with more history, more tradition in men's football, but in some ways being considered the favorites for these games. So doesn't necessarily make them the better team, and the better team will win the game, obviously. But I do think Canada has been growing in this tournament. They were better against Chile, like I said, than they were against Peru, in my opinion. And I think that 180 minutes against those two opponents will serve as very, very good preparation for this game. In terms of why they might not win it, I think it's probably the opposite of Chile and Peru in that those teams were maybe a bit overestimated based on what they're actually putting on the pitch today, based on Peru's success qualifying for the World Cup a few years ago, Chile obviously being double Copa America winners not too long ago. I think those teams aren't at their best right now. Chile in particular starting to age compared to the sides we've seen in recent years. Venezuela might be going in the other direction. Talent-wise, they may not jump off the page, but this is a team that's only lost to Colombia and Italy since the start of 2023. Like, it's not just this tournament where they got 9 points in the group stage. They're doing well in World Cup qualifying as well. They went to Brazil and got a draw. So it's a team that seems to be trending in the right direction rather than the wrong one, which I do think will make it, aside from Argentina, obviously Canada's most challenging game yet.
Yeah, really quickly, just add on specifically when it comes to the Canadian talent, there's a qualitative advantage when you look at Laren and David in attack versus at Venezuelan back line. There just is. And both those players have shown before for Canada that they can be match winners. And I'd be confident that those players can take their chances here tonight. The reason why they might not win is, to Ollie's point, just 3 losses in their last 19 for Venezuela. It's really a team on the ascendancy. We speak about the Canadian Brotherhood. That team has really come together during some really difficult times for that nation. AGR mentioned it. They're excellent in the midfield. I think that they might have an advantage over a potential 2-man Canadian midfield as well. And I'm assuming there's going to be a crowd advantage again tonight. Canada's gone up against it in 3 consecutive games. It's difficult. I think Canada's learned from it, but it certainly doesn't skew in their favor. And finally, this isn't a negative when it comes to Canada. I just don't know what to expect. Like, it's playing just about 100 minutes when you've been a man up in this tournament. It's not 11v11. It's been like more about scrapping and clawing more so than seeing what this team is all about. So I kind of need to see it a little bit more. And considering how long Jesse Marsh has been in the job, there isn't a whole lot of body of work here. So that's why it could be an X factor in a really good way. But to me, there's still some questions about what this Canada team is all about under Jesse Marsh. We'll see. It's a huge night for Canadian football. Obviously, the World Cup provided some big moments. Playing in the Nations League, yes, some good tests as well. But the chance to advance to a semifinal of a Copa America to take on Argentina, what an opportunity it is for this team. Here's Alistair Johnston of Canada about what it would mean and what a game like this and the potential achievement that comes along with it would mean for the players in the program.
We look at this match, a very difficult Venezuela side, a team like us in a way that really works hard defensively, and it's been really ruthless. I think their attacking lineup, again, as we talked about, Soteldo, Rondon's a handful, especially as I look at it as a defender. It's a team that we got to be, really prepared for. But at the same time, it's 2 teams that look at this as a glorious opportunity to really make a deep run in Copa America. So that's something that we're excited by. And again, full respect to the opponent, but at the same time, we really want and believe that we have a chance to do something special in this tournament. And that wasn't just getting out of the group. So it's an exciting time.
I totally appreciate where Johnston is coming from. And there's belief within this group that they can go on and do it. But what about this, AGR? Is there a feeling right now that Canada, mission accomplished, like the outside perception, obviously not within the team, that they're playing with a little bit of house money right now? Because, the goal really was to get out of the group. Or, based upon the opponent that you're playing, would it be a disappointment if they don't inevitably go on and win the game tonight?
I think it's a bit of both, because let's be real. If you're telling most people a month ago, brand new coach, the group they had, like just Argentina off the top and the run of games they had beforehand, you making the knockout stages, you say, all right, you don't ask any questions. It's just to get here is huge, because win or lose, the chance to taste a knockout game in a tournament like this, it's going to be different level, and Canada will benefit from this. But at the same time, it is worth noting, like you mentioned, the opponent, Venezuela, they're a good team, but Canada easily could have been playing Uruguay, Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador in these sorts of games had the draw not gone in their favor. Not to say Venezuela can't compete with those teams. Venezuela has beaten some of those teams, but it's something where I think Canada will fancy themselves a bit more. So I think it's something where they can also be disappointed if they don't win. And I think based on the mentality Jesse Marsh has instilled in them, they will definitely be pretty frustrated if they don't win. So I think it's definitely something where you have to remember the expectations on the team heading into the tournament, but at the same time, appreciate it's a new frontier, a new opportunity and a great, but they might not get a better opportunity than this to reach a semifinal.
Ollie, you've been around the team the last couple of days. What's your sentiment?
Yeah, I think it's complicated with Canada. Like, if you want to talk about the team, there's no question they expect to win this game. And Jesse Marsh said it on the records. Tajon Buchanan is going to come with us to New York when we win and when we go to the semifinal. So that's the mood in the group. The outside perception will be that Canada has done very well just to get this far. I think both within Canada and externally as well. And no one is going to be saying if they lose this quarterfinal, what a real shocking outcome for Canada to get to a Copa America quarterfinal. That's nowhere near good enough. That's obviously not gonna be the sentiment. But I do think that, you know, as you go through a tournament like this, it's okay for expectations to evolve a little bit. And Canada may have surprised a lot of people to reach this stage, and they deserve credit for doing that. But then I also think you do have to look at this matchup and say that this generation of Canadian players will probably not ever get a better opportunity to be in a Copa America semifinal than playing Venezuela. Like it's as good as it's likely going to get. You can look at the other three ties. Obviously, you know, Colombia's in one, Uruguay, Brazil, Argentina. Those are the teams that you're normally going to be facing at this stage of the competition. And so I do think there will be, even if, you know, the outside pressure hasn't got to that point yet, and there's 4 Canadian journalists here, but that's another story. I think internally there will be real disappointment in this group and an understanding that they've let something go if they don't advance to a Copa America semifinal against Argentina, because they've got a wonderful opportunity to do it.
Either way, Canada are going to have few games between now and the World Cup that you can replicate the type of pressure, the type of atmosphere of a must-win occasion. Like these experiences are simply huge for this group. I think it's okay to reset expectations as we move across the way. There's been so many negative stories around Canadian soccer, some self-inflicted, some absolutely garbage, some worthwhile to dig deeper into. But we as a collective sporting nation need to be able to set that bar higher and have reason to do it. And I think that through these players, if they're able to come away with a result tonight, I think it goes a long way to really starting that hype train, really getting some belief as we head into 2026. And hopefully along with that comes much needed positivity about the game and the soccer, where the politics and the nonsense is pushed to the side, and we just get to focus on this really good team with a bunch of really good guys and the task at hand. So fingers crossed on that. When it comes to being a surprise outfit, I mean, I don't think that Canada thinks they're a surprise. Neither do Venezuela. Their coach came out, Fernando Batista came out and said, "We feel okay. We're coming out of an almost ideal group phase. We moved on to the next round, but it's not an achievement." They are aiming bigger and better as well. They're aspirational. They're looking decent to go on and qualify for the World Cup, but they expect to do some damage here. And I think that outside of our borders, Alex, where I think that we know what this Canadian team's all about, if you went through South America, even the United States or Mexico, they're fully expecting Venezuela to be the favorite here tonight. What do you make of that? That, you know, which one, Canada or Venezuela, be the biggest surprise outfit here?
Maybe it's a bit of a surprise, but for me, it's Venezuela. I'd say it's 100% Venezuela. I think it's worth noting that, you know, among the South American teams, they've kind of they've underperformed in a lot of ways. They're the only team in the continent not to have made a World Cup. Everyone else has made at least 2 in their history. That's something where they've chronically underperformed. At Copa Americas, they're one of just 2 teams never to win, along with Ecuador. And not only that, their best ever performance is just finishing 4th. And they did that only once in 2011. I thought it was interesting. Yangel Herrera in his press conference, he said, "Yeah, look, we're one way away from equaling their best ever Copa America." Like that's something where for them, this is massive just to be here against a Canadian team where they'll fancy, all right, they avoided some of the big dogs in the way for them for that. And even when you looked at the group heading into the tournament, Ecuador were the favorites. They've been phenomenal. They've got a good team, lots of young players. Mexico, of course, we know above the border, they haven't been the greatest as of late. Venezuela had only beaten Mexico twice in 20 previous meetings. Mexico has dominated that meeting all the time. It was a big deal for Venezuela to beat them. So for them to go 9-9, to be in this position within touching stage of a semifinal, just their second ever in their history, I'd say it's Venezuela.
Ollie?
I think if I try to go back to how I was feeling before the start of the tournament and not be too revisionist with it, I think I would say that Canada is more surprising. I don't know that either one is a huge surprise, to be honest with you, but I just thought that the South American teams in general would perform better than the CONCACAF teams, and so I guess I'm more surprised that a CONCACAF team knocked out 2 CONMEBOL teams than vice versa. So I'll say Canada.
Yeah, I think the biggest surprise to me is individual players and how they fared in this Canada side. I've said it all along. No one heading into the Jesse Marsh era where the two center backs were going to be a brand new center back partnership of Bombito and Cornelius. And you're like, okay, let's see how this works. It's worked spectacularly well. Both those players have risen to the challenge. That is a significant surprise to me, how good they've been and how they've transformed this Canada team into something completely different than we saw before. With all due respect to the players that they've come in to replace, they just play in a different way. But I think it just brings a different element to this Canada team. That's what surprised me, is how quickly that's happened. And they're going to have their hands full tonight with Solomon Rondon. Like, other than dealing with Argentina, you're not facing an out-and-out number 9 like that. For Peru, they're all old. Chile, they're all slow. So tonight it's going to be a little bit of a different challenge when they take on Venezuela. We cannot wait for it. And what a carrot being dangled, because Argentina survived. Yes, survived against Ecuador. It was 1-1 through 90 minutes. Obviously, this goes straight to extra time. 90+1, Ecuador equalized after they missed a penalty earlier. And then Lionel Messi steps up as a first shooter. His Panenka is a miss. And the best goalkeeper in the world, Emi Martinez, to the rescue. This guy is just so phenomenal. And Argentina, through that little bit of a scare, go on to the semifinal. What do you make of what happened there, AGR, and how both Canada and Venezuela should be looking at this? Did Argentina show a little bit of vulnerability in that game?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, of course, it's worth noting that Messi clearly didn't look at 100%. And when Messi's not at 100%, he's the heartbeat of that team. The rest of the team suffers a bit. His touches were limited. He obviously missed the Panenka in the shootout. But I think what it showed is, it's for them, it's mentality. That's always been the different thing under Scaloni. It's the mentality of the group, that they don't need Messi to be at their best. They find a way to survive. Martinez is a mentality monster. They've got other mentality monsters. So I definitely think there were some vulnerabilities, but it's worth noting Argentina has, they're not always dominating games. Like at the World Cup, they struggled against Mexico. They lost against Saudi. They went to penalties against the Netherlands. Even in the last Copa, they got through penalties against Colombia in the semifinals. Argentina constantly shows vulnerabilities. They just got the mentality to overcome it.
Ollie?
Yeah, I think there's two things that give you a little bit or a glimmer of hope if you're a team that's going to face Argentina. One is just Messi's fitness, like AGR said, and what kind of state he's in. And the second thing is that there's one thing in football that Lionel Messi is not that great at, which is taking penalties. And you only need 90 minutes to get Argentina to a shootout if you meet them before the final, as opposed to 120, which I think is much more difficult to accomplish. So those are the two little reasons for optimism I'll take out of that game.
Unfortunately, Emi Martinez in penalties is
He
a clear difference. Bingo, double-edged sword. Yeah. All right, just in the final minutes here, let's play a game of Who Ya Got. Who you got? It's simple. Canada, Venezuela, Ollie, who you got?
Canada on penalties.
AGR?
Said copy and Ollie. 0-0 in regular time. Canada's got the qualitative advantage on penalties.
I picked that too. God, we're predictable here. I don't know, but again, I'm not confident whatsoever in that prediction. All right, Colombia or Panama? AGR, who you got?
Colombia all the way. They should have beat Brazil the other day, and they've looked so good right now. I think Colombia could get a 2 or 3-0 here.
Best team in this tournament, Colombia. By the way, that Colombia-Brazil game, I put it up against any match that I've watched at Euro. It was so good. And they're unbeaten in 26? Just crazy. Ollie.
Yeah, credit to Panama. They've had a really good tournament, and I hope it's not too one-sided, but have to go Colombia.
Panama are a good team. Look out in CONCACAF. This is a team also completely on the rise. Great manager as well in Thomas Christensen. And finally, what a game this is going to be. Uruguay, Brazil. Ollie, who you got?
I think I'm going to go with Brazil. My heart says Uruguay, but my head says Brazil's going to do it.
AGR?
I had Uruguay before the tournament beating Brazil in this exact game. Brazil's just looked vulnerable. I don't know where the goals are going to come from. You know what? I'll back Uruguay. Bielsa ball. There's something about it. It's fun to watch.
Me too. No Vinny Jr., no party. I think that this is an average Brazil side, which is an excellent side for most countries, but this Brazil side certainly isn't vintage. So let's go Bielsa. Let's go Uruguay. Great show today, guys. Keep it locked to One Soccer and our social channels all day long. We got Canadian Premier League action and live watch-alongs for Canada, Venezuela tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Pacific. On behalf of Ollie and AGR, I'm Wheels. Go out, enjoy it, Canada. And oh, Canada, oh, baby.